Thank you for joining us to this Monday afternoon. Some of you it's afternoon, some of it's noon, some of it's before noon, some of you before noon, to talk about how to launch a regional cohort. We've got quite a bit of interest. I think we had about 78 people signed up. Of course, some of those are existing regional cohort leaders and new cohort leaders coming on this year. Before we get started, I'm going to pass it over to Brooke, and she is going to follow with the obligatory instructions on how to ask questions and interact. So, Brooke, take it away.
Hello, everyone. We're glad that you have joined us today. Some of you we've already been in contact with and have been sending us questions. And for others, you're just going to learn about what it takes to lead a regional cohort. At any time during the presentation, you can type in a question and we will take those questions at the end of the presentation. If you scroll to the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A tab. Go ahead and type your questions there. I'll be monitoring those during the presentation. So with that, I will turn it back over to Michael.
Thank you, Brooke. And also want to introduce Steve Hunter, who's on the call with us. Steve is the Regional Cohort Director in Seattle, has been doing so for a number of years, very successful cohort up there. And I've asked Steve to join us and to be available to offer some of his insight gained from his experience, which he'll do later on in the broadcast. But with that, let me go ahead and get started. I want to begin by giving everybody an overview of the Colson Fellows Program and what things are going to look like moving forward. As most of you may already be aware, we've made a lot of changes to the program, opening up new channels of delivery. The goal being we want to expand the reach and impact of the Colson Fellows Program. Now in its 17th year, this is our 15th class. And given the success and impact of the program, the vision of the Colson Center is to figure out ways that we can expand the reach and impact without compromising the quality or integrity of the program. And we believe that the future of that really rests with the regional cohorts. The regional cohorts, which came online about 4 years ago, evolved with the advent of certain technological advancements, namely the learning platform, so we can control the quality and integrity of the content, as well as minimizing the burden on the regional cohort leadership team so they don't have to create curriculum and try to augment the program. But also through the just the sheer expansion in the number of alumni. Regional cohorts are contingent upon alumni leadership, and our alumni leadership really drive the success of our regional cohorts, the experience of the regional cohorts. And in the last 4 years, we really began to see that as the regional cohorts grew and expanded in terms of number of reach and impact, in fact, we have more students going through regional cohorts than the national program for the last 2 years. So it just became clear to us that the regional cohort, meeting monthly, learning in community, was in fact the better learning experience for our students. It's also the more scalable model in that we want to spread these cohorts into all 100 of the largest major metropolitan areas over the course of the next 5 years. Last year we had, or this current academic year, we have 25 active regional cohorts. We're at 31 in anticipation of the 2020 academic year. Our goal is to have 35 online in time for the launch of the 2020 academic year, at least 31, or at least 35. So the regional cohorts are really the future, which is why we're having this webinar today to talk about how you can start a regional cohort and what that looks like. The national program will be going through some changes in 2020. Namely, it will become an online cohort. There will no longer be a national program as it has existed in the past, which required students to primarily access the curriculum online, but attend 3 residency weekends. We will not be doing that anymore. Online cohorts will be for those students that do not live near a regional cohort. They will have the option of going through the online program. Tuition costs are the same, which is another change that we made, and as the regional cohorts came online, there was an element of competition between the national and the regional. They were priced differently. I think in many respects they were perceived differently, as if the national program was superior to the regional program, when in fact that was not the case. So there's going to be more parity in the various delivery channels that you're going to be exposed to in the 2020 academic year. In addition to that, we have the academic affiliate program. We launched the pilot of this program 2 years ago. We've learned some things, namely that the program may be a little too rigorous for most staff and faculty of the average Christian school. They just don't have the time commitment, the time to make the commitment. But what we are going to do is we're going to offer a certificate-based program that will go from the current 2-year model to a 1-year model. It will not yield Colson Fellows, so they won't receive the same credential that someone going through the Colson Fellows program will. Instead, there'll be something akin to a Colson Fellows academic associate. But we are seeing increasing interest in schools, and of course there is a tremendous need within Christian schools, based on the feedback that we hear from a lot of headmasters. While they are committed to imparting a Christian worldview to their students, they are discovering that most of their faculty and staff lack the Christian worldview necessary to do that. So this is helping to augment that deficiency. And beginning in 2020, we're going to launch something known as the Institutional Affiliate Program. And this is our way of serving churches and parachurch organizations, nonprofit ministries, where we can, through a licensing agreement with a minimum number of students from churches and from institutional affiliates, train the leadership and staff of their organizations, whether they be church staff or ministry staff on a nonprofit. That then leads to the church affiliate program, which will be something that you at the regional cohort level will be able to promote in your community. And for those churches that have functioned as institutional affiliates, meaning they have trained key staff members, we will then allow those churches to start their own internal cohorts. And what I mean by internal is they will only be available to the congregation of that church. In other words, they won't be marketing outside the church in competition with our regional cohorts, but through a licensing agreement, it will give them the ability to deliver the Colson Fellows program at a more economical rate, based on having, again, a minimum number of students. So let's jump into what it looks like to run a regional cohort. And first and foremost, it involves managing a leadership team. What is key to a successful cohort is recruiting other Colson Fellow alumni and getting them involved in the facilitation of the program through the monthly residency, and serving local students. We do require that regional cohorts have a minimum of 3 commissioned Colson Fellows serving on the leadership team. Steve, I would ask you, how many people do you have on your leadership team?
We have 6 right now.
Yeah.
It varies a little bit. Every now and then we may have somebody that goes off, but we replace them with someone new.
Yeah, and that seems to be the pretty standard with most regional cohorts, that leadership usually includes anywhere from 5 to 8 people. And there just seems to be a constant rotation of new people coming in as other people have served and go off, namely from the existing student ranks. So the more the merrier, would you say, Steve?
Absolutely. And what it does is it helps you to kind of uphold the entire group. And there's so much that can be delegated off or that you can do together. And so it just really makes a lot of sense to do it that way.
Yeah, and let me just talk briefly about some of those roles in terms of the leadership team and what you're looking for people to do in that capacity. One, you want to find somebody that is responsible for recruiting and coordinating mentors. that will deal with local alumni, reach out to them, communicate with them. They may not be local. They may be part of our broader alumni list. They may live elsewhere, and they may do their mentoring via the telephone. So you need somebody that is responsible for recruiting mentors. You need somebody to arrange and pick up refreshments for each month's meeting, the residency. You want to have, you want to exercise some nice hospitality. You're asking people to spend anywhere from 3 to 5 hours on a Saturday morning once a month. You want it to be nice. You want to have a nice venue, and you want to have some nice snacks, and you certainly want really good coffee, right?
Amen.
You need somebody to manage your cohort's Facebook page, because the Facebook page is where you post all of your dynamic content. Content related to monthly meetings, locations, times, prospective guest speakers that you may be having appear at the forthcoming month's meeting, etc. So you want somebody that can do that. You want somebody that can recruit and coordinate guest speakers, equipment, facilities, make sure everything is ready and in place, set up, technologically speaking. And then finally, you need somebody who acts as the treasurer to draft and manage the budget. And of course, the budget is based on your revenue, and your revenue is based on the number of students you have. If, for example, you have 10 students, we're charging those students $900 in tuition each, and we are splitting that with the regional cohort. So $450 goes to the Colson Center. $450 goes into an account specific to your regional cohort. We manage that account. We manage the accounting for that account. But we do ask that you keep a local record of what you're spending and what you project to spend and how you intend to spend. But you're not dealing with any money. You're not dealing with any cash. You're not dealing with accepting payments, tuition payments, any of that. We handle all those back-end office functions. But we need that point person to function as a treasurer to interact with our accounting department. You manage the agenda and schedule at each month's residency meeting. And typically this involves a lot of empowerment of students. So you're assigning students. You and your leadership team are having probably an hour to 2 hour conversation prior to each month's meeting. And you're measuring out assignments, assigning one student to talk about this particular book or that particular book or the webinar or video, whatever they are currently reading or watching or listening to in preparation for that month's meeting. And really letting the students lead the conversation. And you and the leadership team sort of step back and manage that, ask provocative questions if you need to stimulate the conversation. Keep the philosophical and theological and worldview guardrails up so students don't wander off into the weeds in the course of their discussion. So sometimes offer a general corrective and get them back on track. And again, you're just facilitating this monthly meeting. You really want to provide them a lot of opportunity to interact with and process what they're going through. The feedback that we get from students more often than not is the content and the curriculum can be a little overwhelming. So the opportunity to each month sit down with their peers, with leadership, with Colson Fellows, and really process and talk through what they're learning is profoundly helpful in the process to them. They really value that time. Much more so really than having outside speakers, especially if those outside speakers are in addition to the existing curriculum. You will also recruit and approve candidates. Now, the lion's share of the recruiting responsibility falls to national. What I think will help the regional cohorts in the future is now all of our national recruiting is driving students into not the national program, but the nearest regional cohort. And that's a new change this year. So we will do the lion's share of that. And as soon as we receive applications to your respective cohorts, you're going to receive a copy of that application for review. And regional cohort directors and their leadership teams, they are given complete responsibility as to who they accept and who they choose not to accept. We will offer some insight if there's questions about a candidate. We're here to offer advice. And then, of course, you'll manage the relationship with your students, with your learners, with your candidates, and walk them through the process of completing the application, helping them understand what it is that they're going to be getting involved in. One of the new features that we will initiate this year that we have not done previously in an effort to ease the burden on students is as soon as they apply and are approved and accepted into the program and pay their deposit, they will be given access to the curriculum. So theoretically, a student could have access to the reading list as early as February. So they can get a head start. They can get a jump on their reading. So when August 1 rolls around, they don't feel like they're behind the 8 ball trying to catch up and get discouraged and drop out. So that will be one of the new features that we initiate this year. Each month, we have a monthly leadership call that is organized by time zone, where all of the cohort directors within a respective time zone are scheduled to meet. Those conversations, those discussions are led by one of their peers. Steve Hunter, who's on the call with us this afternoon, leads the Pacific time zone cohort. And this is intended to be a working meeting that usually lasts about an hour, and it's an opportunity to share best practices, solutions to challenges, recruiting suggestions, ideas, as well as a source of innovation. Ideas that are discovered and that improve the experience for our students. So we really want to push a lot of innovation out to the regional cohorts, trusting our cohort leaders to tell us what they think will improve the program, and then integrating that. So, and then of course, the regional cohort is the single individual at a regional cohort tasked with interacting with the national office. And that is myself, Brooke Colon, as the Associate Director of the Colson Fellows Program. It is with the regional cohort director that we communicate. We do utilize a communications platform known as Slack that new cohort directors are given access to, and this is the primary way we communicate between the national office, regional cohorts, as well as regional cohorts able to communicate with one another. So before we talk about the next steps, I want to ask Steve to step in. Steve, you've been doing this for I think about 5 years. Is that right?
Yeah, started in fall of 2015.
2015, and so the obvious question is, why do you keep doing this?
It's interesting. I started listening to Chuck Colson on Breakpoint as I was commuting back and forth to work, and every time he recommended a book, that was something that I made sure I went out, purchased, and read. And when I had the opportunity of going through the program in 2012, it just really hit that niche of what I was really looking for. And as God would have it, it really provided an opportunity for me to be able to use the skills and the gifting that I had been graciously given to use. And I think that the thing for me is really understanding the times and knowing what to do. And as a leader, seeing the light come on for folks within our program so they can use that within their sphere of influence is just really encouraging for me. I love it. And it's fun to be able to interact, to coach individually, come alongside them and be able to help. And in my role right now, being able to do that with some of the other regions, that's just really a lot of fun. So it's been quite the journey. But as God would have it, it's like I'm living my 3-year plan out right now, and that's been really fun. Yeah.
Well, and from a 30,000-foot level, I mean, this is the vision of the Colson Center, and I don't think nobody on this call is not concerned about the state of our culture, nor the state of the church and its apparent inability to do anything about that culture. And we believe at the Colson Center that the Colson Fellows Program is a vital tool in equipping an anemic body of Christ to live out faithfully what it means to be a disciple of Christ in this particular cultural moment. I tell people all the time, you're right to be concerned about the culture. However, please understand, our culture is not a consequence of a secular occupation. It is the direct result of the Christian evacuation, both intellectual and physical. We've just removed ourselves from the culture. We've stopped thinking Christianly, and we believe that the Colson Fellows Program and hopefully it's been everybody's experience on this call, it is a vital start in restoring the Christian mind, in equipping people to think Christianly much more deeply so they can live and act Christianly much more deeply, much more faithfully. So let's talk briefly about the next steps, and then we'll open it up for questions. I'll bring Brooke back on, and then we'll have a time of Q&A. So if you're interested and you want to launch a regional cohort in an area where one does not currently exist, the first step is we need to build a leadership team. Like I said earlier, we need at least 3 commissioned Colson Fellows committed to being a part of that leadership team, with one of those agreeing to serve as the cohort director. And we will help you do this. So we will pull a list of alumni from within that respective metropolitan area, and we will personally reach out to them by phone call, by email, and solicit their participation in the forthcoming regional cohort. At that point, we're going to turn them over to you to make a connection with. And once we get that core leadership team, then we're going to organize a webinar for you and for that group, that prospective leadership team that we together have assembled. And we will go through and explain the process, the duties, the responsibilities. Obviously, everybody's first concern is, I don't have enough time to do this. They're commitment phobic. I will tell you, this is not a time-intensive commitment. Not if you have the right leadership team in place. This can be done efficiently. We have tried to make this as frictionless as possible, streamlined as possible. So really, you organize in preparation for that monthly residency. You attend that residency, and you facilitate that residency. So we will explain that whole process to that prospective leadership team and all of your prospective members. Once we confirm that there is a willingness to move forward, and we've got that core leadership team committed, then we will officially establish the regional cohort. You, as the prospective cohort director, will complete the cohort director application and sign the licensing agreement, and you are an official Colson Fellows regional cohort. And included in the official establishment is now that cohort is listed on the application. So when students come on and they live in your area, they know instantly that there is a cohort in their area to which they can apply. That cohort will also be posted along with contact information on the website, the colsonfellows.org website, the space to which we're driving all of our marketing and development efforts. And then the next step are you and your team secure a venue, find a location that is suitable for hosting your monthly residency, and you begin to start recruiting. And most of that recruiting is passive recruiting. It's through your respective networks, circles of influence. We are in the process of producing some tools that we hope will aid you in that recruiting effort. But again, all of that is occurring simultaneous to the broader national marketing and recruiting efforts as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Brooke to come back on the call, and we'll open it up for discussion. So feel free to pose any questions to myself, to Brooke, to Steve as a cohort director, experienced cohort director. And we've got a number of other cohort directors on the call as well that might want to chime in with answers.
So we have a couple of questions for Steve. Lewis asks, how many students did you have your first year? And how many graduates did you have helping your first year?
Really good question. I was in a situation where I took over an existing group. So, but what I did though is because there were some changes that were taking place in our leadership, where some folks were stepping back, I took on the responsibility of just recruiting new leaders. So I think we had 1 or 2 that remained, then we added 4 more. Then as things have gone on, I've continued to just reach out and seek more responsibility for certain people, and just really listen to see who are the ones that want to take on more responsibility. So I see this as kind of an ongoing task, if you will, to make sure that we've got the right people in place all the time.
And along with that, Lewis also asks, do you have spreadsheets and other tools that you have used to manage your cohort that would be available to new cohorts so we don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, I usually, if I'm not mistaken, there's information that we get typically from the 2 Brooks. Then I usually put together a spreadsheet that I keep that has the pertinent information so I can follow up. And then I also use Google to make groups so I can send out emails. And that's usually the easiest way to follow up. I think one of the questions that was asked was, how many did we have in our first group? And I think it was 7 or 8. Then I think we've maintained right around there. And we started with 12 for this current session that we're in right now.
And this is for both of you. When recruiting, what makes a good candidate?
You want me to answer that first? I would say a good candidate is somebody that already has an intellectual inclination in their understanding of their faith. In other words, they believe in the value of worshiping the Lord their God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. So they've got to have that inclination, 1. 2, I think you're generally going to find that our candidates who do self-select, by the way, tend to fall into the category of their natural leaders. They're often in leadership positions. They're generally successful, well accomplished, and let me clarify by what I mean successful and well accomplished. There are some very successful and well accomplished homeschool moms that do that extraordinarily well. So I'm not talking about financially successful necessarily, and well accomplished corporately. That success is measured in a lot of different ways, but they are driven people, is my point. They are making things happen. They are doers, if you will. And I would say that they are spiritually mature. They tend towards spiritual maturity already. So, we're not attracting the brand new Christian. More often, we're attracting the seasoned Christian, the one that's been through the wars, so to speak, and they're really wanting to, continue to grow in their knowledge and understanding. So. Steve, what would you say?
I would also say that typically the people that we've accepted, they have all had a mindset of being a student. They've taken it upon themselves to learn, to expand where they're headed in order to be able to share. I also have looked to see what kind of influence they have around them. And I think in a lot of ways that helps to see how they can take what they're learning in the program right now and be able to use that elsewhere. I also like to see if someone has been a mentor before, and I know it's been in the application, and so that kind of mindset also helps with what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just add that since everybody on this call is a Colson fellow, they're really the smartest people in the world.
Someone is a participant in the Dayton, Ohio cohort, says that they've had a small team and asks about the possibility of merging Dayton and Columbus into a single cohort. It may be good for you to shoot us an email so Michael and I can touch base with you directly. and talk with Jonathan about that possibility. Do you want to add anything, Michael?
Yeah, I think that's worth considering, to be quite honest. These are regional cohorts, and I live in Dallas, and we have a Dallas cohort. We've had discussions about launching a Fort Worth cohort. I think what we've actually reasoned is that we would hold off on that until we get to a point where we maximize capacity, which for us is about 15 students in a cohort. Beyond that, it gets a little unwieldy. That's when we would consider starting a second cohort in the Metroplex.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if I add one thing to that? One of the things that we've been doing on the West Coast is we've been sharing our sessions together. So we have one that's coming up in a couple of weeks where we'll have John Stonestreet as our speaker, and the folks in Alaska and California will be joining us for that session. We'll open that up to the other regions as well. But I think being able to share in that way is something that I think has been excellent for us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you see more and more of that, and that's one of the advantages of the Slack platform is all of these opportunities are made available by the respective cohort leaders. Somebody asked for sample spreadsheets that Steve is using or any other cohort leader. Things like that can be requested through Slack. They can be posted on Slack and accessible to everybody.
So you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
That's right. Someone asks how they could learn who would be interested in being a part of a leadership team and who might be interested. We can put together a list of individuals in your area, and Michael and I work together to touch base with them directly to see if they might be interested, and then can connect them with you as well. How many students do we need minimum to get started?
3. Minimum of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And in some regional, some areas, there may be a limited number of alumni. And so you've got to build your leadership team through students. And that's one of the ways you can recruit them, incentivize them to come on board. If they're interested in serving in a leadership capacity, we can talk about scholarshiping somebody. If they're the right person, if you think they're the right person that can help build the cohort, then let's talk about scholarshiping.
Someone asks if we've given special consideration regarding international exposure to the program, and what would the model of delivery be? Would these cohorts function online as in the same model as the U.S. online cohorts, and what is the big vision with respect to international expansion of the program?
Well, we have one international cohort right now, and that is in Australia. That is actually working through a church, right, Brooke?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they cover the entire country. So they have students from all over Australia that are going through the program, not just in their particular city. We have not put together anything formal at this point with regard to expanding the regional cohorts beyond North America into international territories, namely because we still have to have a sufficient number of alumni engaged in that cohort. The online cohort may offer us that opportunity, but we would probably limit any international cohort to a Western culture because the content is oriented toward a Western culture and would be hard to translate into a non-Western culture at this point.
That's right. And it does take a little more time. Bill and I meet with our Australia cohort once a month with the leadership there, and we also do specific webinars just for them and work with the content that we provided, all the same content, but the leaders do engage it with the idea of what's happening in Australia, what current events are happening there. So there is a little more work involved with the international cohort as well. Someone asks, would you recommend starting off as a member of a cohort team rather than being the cohort leader?
I think that's an individual choice. Our experience has been that the cohort leader is the first to emerge. They're the one that comes to us and says, I want to do this. There is a need in my community, and they help lead that effort. If that's not your inclination, you can still be part of the leadership team. You can be part of recruiting that prospective cohort leader and serving alongside them. It just depends on what you feel most comfortable with.
When can a participant in the current class begin the process to lead a regional cohort?
In about 15 minutes.
We actually have 2 people within my cohort. One is in Canada, and so he's about 6 hours north of us that's contemplating doing that. And we have another one that's involved in the military. So that's for an ongoing discussion, but because of where they're headed, we're having a different type of discussion individually. And so I think that actually makes it really fun.
Yeah, and seriously, if you are currently in the program and anticipating being commissioned in May and interested in launching a regional cohort, now is the time to get involved. Mm-hmm. And let's have a conversation, and let's begin exploring the prospective alumni in your area. And the reason now is the time is because we kick off our national recruiting campaign in February. And if we do that, we want to have your cohort listed on the website so prospective students know that is an option available to them. If they go there and don't see that as an option, they may decline to apply.
Someone says, I can imagine a scenario where you have more exceptionally qualified candidates than slots. How do you determine the cohort size and potential overflow? Can cohorts be too large?
We believe they can be too large, and we believe this because this is what we've heard from our cohort directors. I know that Barry Wynn, who leads the Carolinas cohort, he limits his to 13 students. He feels like above that gets to be difficult. We have set the standard at 15, no more than standard. I would also ask Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
I would also say it depends on the leadership team within your group. So I could see it probably topping out at 15. But if you don't have a really experienced leadership team with you, that would make it very difficult.
Yeah.
So like I've mentioned before, we've had as small as 6, and we've had as many under my leadership as 12. And so, but you've got to have strong leaders when you have a larger group like that.
Yeah, and hopefully we do get to a point where we are pressing the limits of our existing cohorts that necessitates the launch of additional cohorts within a metropolitan area. I think, Steve, you're almost there right now. You're already exploring the idea of another cohort in the Seattle metropolitan area.
Right.
So, yes, I did see Stuart ask the question, will Wilberforce Weekend still be a part of the program? Yes. And in replacement of the residencies that historically took place in September and January, we are going to begin to put together smaller regional events that we are currently referring to as symposiums. These will be exclusive to current students and alumni. They will not be open to the public, and these will be up to the minute, up to date, current cultural briefings, for lack of a better term, issued by the leadership and staff and faculty of the Colson Center. There'll be a time of fellowship and gathering with alumni. There'll be lower cost events. Right now, we've got one scheduled for January of next year, so a year from now, that will be hosted in San Antonio. We're also going to launch next year a retreat for cohort directors and leadership team members that will be held at Glen Erie in Colorado Springs. And that will be an opportunity to, one, demonstrate our appreciation for our cohort leadership, but also engage cohort leadership in training other cohort leaders. Best practices relative to recruiting, running a meeting, recruiting speakers, all of the various, the blocking and tackling stuff. It'll be an opportunity to sit in on sessions where you can learn from those that are having the most success in those areas.
And along with that, you asked about webinars. The webinars that we have will continue to take place. So the national office will still provide 2 webinars per month that all participants will take part in. What is the deadline for having a meeting location selected? I see that as a key issue given the far-flung locations where our leaders and candidates live.
Well, again, our recruiting takes place or kicks off February 3rd, officially, national recruiting. So the sooner the better, because that information will appear on your Facebook page, because sometimes that is a question people have, as well as your personal contact information. So even if you're not at a point where you've posted that, when they call, you can say, we're looking at meeting at such and such church or such and such facility. Steve meets at a local university there in Seattle, local college there in Seattle, has a nice venue. We have people that meet in their homes. We have people that meet in churches. We have people that meet at colleges and seminaries. So there's a pretty diverse array of venues that cohorts have chosen.
How big does the metro area need to be to establish a cohort?
We have identified a list of the 100 largest metropolitan areas in the United States that obviously begins with New York City and goes all the way down to, I'm not sure what the 100th metropolitan area is on that city. You might be able to look that up real quick, Brooke, but if I do, my screen will disappear. But if you have a question, just shoot us an email and we can tell you where your area sits in that list.
Michael, can we go back to the previous question? One of the things that I thought would be really important, if someone is considering what they're wanting to use for facilities, make sure they've got good internet ability. One of the things that worked out really well for us with Northwest University was how they had some of their information and web ability set up where we could use Apple TV. We could log in very easily with HDMI in order to connect and have a screen that's easy for people to see. Particularly if we were having a conversation either with other groups, because within our group, we have people that are 6 hours away. So in times where we have bad weather like we're having now, people will be logged in and we can join together. So you've got to have a really good internet facility and being able to have a big enough screen where people can be able to see and connect with one another.
That's good. What is our first next step in the timeline if we are interested?
You can either go online and fill out the cohort director application. That is available online, right?
It's not. I'll email everyone a link to this recording and send in the link to apply as well.
You can email either myself or Brooke and we can have a conversation. You can call me or Brooke and we can have a conversation. Our staff at the Colson Fellows leadership team is here to serve our regional cohort leaders and their teams. So we want to make ourselves as available as possible. So email, telephone, whatever you need, give us a call. We can have a quick conversation and answer any questions that you might have. There is no cost for cohort leaders personally. In fact, we offer some perks to cohort leaders, such as they get free access for the year to all short courses that are available. There are 6 short courses that we make available throughout the year. Those are free. We give deep discounts to regional events, deep discounts to Wilberforce Weekend. And of course, we're looking to continue to add to that, add to those benefits, which is one of the reasons why we're launching the first ever regional cohort leaders meeting or retreat, I guess is what we're calling it. But so we're looking to move those out, and at some point we will, we might even consider looking at a stipend for our regional cohort leaders.
Do the special speakers or Zoom meetings with authors for the regional meetings get scheduled through the national leaders, or do regional leaders do that on their own?
If they are recruiting a speaker for their local cohort, then they're making those arrangements. The national webinar speakers, we are scheduling all of those. They are incorporated into the curriculum that is accessible through the Colson Fellows Learning Platform. We handle all of that. There has been a trend to augment with local speakers. I am not a fan of that, to be quite honest. Again, because of what I said earlier, the feedback that we get from students is they really prefer to have as much time as possible to interact with the content that they are working through in that particular month. And if you're going to have speakers, I would encourage cohort leaders to invite speakers that are related to elements of the content, elements of the curriculum, or staff members of the Colson Center who are always going to be speaking relative to the curriculum.
And
but it's not necessary to have one every month.
Right. And going back to what Steve said, if it's John Stone Street or Glen Sunshine, we recommend that you work together, work with other cohorts in your region and see if you can all jump on a webinar with John together.
Yeah.
Holly asks, besides the tech capability, what are some of the other criteria for a good location?
I think logistics play a role. You know, I'm in the Metroplex, so if I'm going to try to reach the whole Metroplex, I wouldn't choose a venue that is on the far east side of the Metroplex or the far west side of the Metroplex and ask people to drive 2 hours to get across Dallas-Fort Worth. So I want to find some place that's centrally located. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say centrally located, easy to access, and I think the other thing for us is having a place like the university. We have a relationship with the president of the university, so you know, having relationships and being able to utilize those, I think, is something that really helps. But being centrally located is key.
Someone says, for clarification, did you say a regional cohort can be built without the 3-person leadership team in place, and that we can build the team with participants from the class in future years?
With rare exception, we might consider launching a cohort if there are 1 to 2 alumni who are committed, and we believe that there is enough interest in that area to cultivate future leadership from. But we would take those on a case-by-case basis.
Someone asked about recruitment materials. I am working with an individual that Steve Hunter connected me with on a brochure that we will be finalizing very soon. Our team is reviewing that now, along with banner, tablecloth, business cards, so that as cohorts are confirmed, you can purchase a Go Kit. That will be charged to your account. And as you get students, we will take the funds from your account. The Colson Center will front the money to purchase those items, and then the cohort will pay. And then you can purchase a la carte items that you need to recruit for your program through that website as well. So you'll hear some more information about that in the days ahead. But Gerald, in the meantime, I will share with you how you can purchase business cards and get started with what we have available now. And then the next question, Mike, are we still offering the church partnership discounts? If so, can you go over them?
Yeah, so the church partnership falls under the rubric of the church affiliate program. And so a church affiliate program functions like this. They have to have a designated staff person who has become a commissioned Colson Fellow. Typically, they've achieved that through the institutional affiliate program, or they had an individual that applied to and enrolled in and was accepted in the Colson Fellows program. So they have to have that first. Secondly, if they want to enter into the church affiliate program, there is a licensing agreement. We require that church to commit to 10 spots. We charge them $4,500. That's $450 a student for those 10 spots. They are then at liberty to charge those students whatever they want to charge them. If they want to pass along the expense at cost, if they want to bill them monthly, $45 over the course of 10 months, they can do that. So it is a steep discount to the tuition, and that's why we limit it to just that church and its internal congregation. They are not permitted to recruit outside their boundaries.
And someone asked if a regional cohort is on the website, but isn't shown as active yet. What do we need to do? We need to work with Brooke Boriak to make sure you have a Colson Fellows email address, because those are the email addresses that we are posting to the website. And once that's set up, you can either check that directly, or it can be forwarded to an account of your choosing, and you have to have your Facebook page set up. So once those two things have happened, we'll make sure that they are on the website. And someone else said, how can we connect with you afterwards? You want to talk with Michael, you can email him at mcraven@colsoncenter.org, and I am at bcolon@colsoncenter.org, and you can contact us anytime.
And hey, I'll give you my cell phone number right now. My cell phone number is 214-718-1408. So if you want to call me, by all means, just give me a call on my cell, 214-718-1408.
And someone asked for clarification again. It sounds like the church affiliate situation doesn't need the 3-leader team in place. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the reason for that is that they have, as a staff, as an institution, they have made that commitment to support that effort. So they've got tremendous logistical support given to that one commissioned Colson Fellow.
Right. And those are all the questions we had.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your midday to join us on this call. And like I said, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to either myself or Brooke. Email address for me again is mcraven@colsoncenter.org, and or Brooks is bcolon, COLON, @colsoncenter.org. And we'd be happy to follow up with you. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a blessed day. Steve, thank you for joining us and for your help. Brooke, thank you. God bless everyone.
God bless.
Take care.